Okay, Dougie. Just get my video started here. Now, what you're going to see here in front of you, this is actually the eTro platform. And I'm going to use it tonight to explain your basic buy and sell order forms, because it's really easy to demonstrate, and the terminology used in it is going to be the same for any broker that you're using, simply because they're mandated to use the same terminology for the stuff. Okay, so it's really, really simple. But as far as following along and watching it on a video, it's really easy to use E-Trade's market depth tool, this one right here, to talk about buy and sell orders. Okay, so this is just a basic setup on my platform that you're seeing here. And obviously the stock you're looking at right now is AMD. Now, I know this could sound really basic to some people, but I want to remind you that at one point in time, you may have not known how to do this. And we get people in here that have never done this. So we want to make sure everybody has the right foundation so that they're prepared for, what I call the war against Wall Street. Okay? So looking at a basic order form for buying a stock, okay? That's what we're going to talk about first. It's just a basic order form for buying a stock. What type of buy orders can we do when we are discussing common stock? Two types of buy orders. What are they going to be? Yeah, there you go. A market order or a limit order. Now you notice when I switch here from limit to market, my price grays out. I can't change it anymore. Anybody know why that happens? Let's talk about what a market order is. When you place a market order to buy a stock, you are actually, believe it or not, giving your broker the right to purchase on your behalf the amount of shares you have requested at any price. Okay? Now, most likely, you're going to get filled at or near the ask price. But when you do a market order, you're actually giving them an okay to fill your order at any price. That's not always a good thing. Do I do market orders on some things? Yes. Why do I do them? When I'm buying a whole lot. I would actually rather, let's say I wanted to buy AMD right now, and I wanted to buy more than 14,000 shares. Let's say I wanted to buy 20,000 shares. And if I'm looking at AMD on my market depth level, some would call this a level 2. It's actually a market depth mixed with a level 2. And I would actually rather tell my broker that he can't fill me at any price higher than what I want. Now you see on the ask side of this, if I wanted 20,000 shares, I could either sit somewhere else and hope I got filled, but if I wanted them now, you see that there's 14,000 for sale at $4.30, and there's 11,000 for sale at $4.31. I could simply change the price for me to buy if I wanted 20,000 shares. And I could put my order in for quantity 20,000, price type limit, and a price of $4.31. Now, if nobody else was buying at the exact same time I was buying, what I would expect to see is that I would be filled with the 14,000 shares at $4.30. And the remaining 6,000 that I want for my order would come from what's for sale at $4.31. Does everybody understand that? Is everybody with me just on why I would do it if I wanted 20,000 shares, why I would put my order in at $4.31 and not $4.28? Now, you could sit there and hope to get filled, but see, sadly what happens a lot of times is, they'll give you like 500 shares at $4.28, and then you got to pay your broker again to buy more, chasing it up. So to guarantee I got filled on one order, I would put it in and that the sizes sitting at each price on the ask would give me my fill. What else this does is tells my broker that they can fill me on any price up to $4.31. So let's say that I put in my order, but hundreds of others put in their order at the exact same time. Is it possible that I see my $4.31 show up on the bid and never get filled? Absolutely, that's possible. Just part of the game. But when buying and selling, I much prefer that you use a limit order as opposed to a market order, because a market order allows your broker to fill you at any price. And even though you would assume that they would fill you at the best price, the reality is, if I'm your broker and I've got 100 people that just put in orders to buy AMD, and I've got you who told me I could fill you at any price, and I've got this other guy that says I've got to fill him at $4.30, I'm going to fill him first. Then I got this young lady that wants filled at $4.31. Well, I'm going to fill her. And by the time it finally comes around, you get your fill at whatever price because you gave me the permission. Then everybody's happy, right? Everybody's happy because you told me give you shares at any price. Other guy said give me shares at $4.30. Young lady said give me shares at $4.31. Everybody's happy. I did my job. I'm a good broker. Truly, that's how you have to think of it. If I wanted to sell my 20,000 shares, let's say I bought those 20,000 shares, and I wanted to sell them and guarantee that I was going to be able to sell them, how would I need to sell them right now based on what you see on my market depth? Would I put it in at $4.30 and hope somebody buys them? I mean, I could, but if I wanted to guarantee that I get out right now, how do I sell those? No. You want to give your broker permission to fill you at any price? There we go. I'm going to sell on the bid. Now in this case, I've got a bid at $4.28 for 20,000 shares. So I could change my order to $4.28 and hit my sell button and sell it to that guy right now. Let's say I had 30,000 shares. Now I got to put my order in at $4.27 so that I could sell 20,000 shares at $4.28 and 10,000 shares at $4.27. Is everybody with me on understanding so far? I know it's simple for a lot of people, but if you don't understand, I don't want you to be embarrassed to speak up, because let's be honest and face it, you're paying for a subscription to the coaches roster. My job's to teach you this stuff. Let's just keep it real, keep it honest, and keep it exactly what it is, right? But when you do a market order, you are truly giving your broker the permission to sell at any price or buy at any price. Dog, I was just using this as an example. Based on the current market depth, the current bid and ask. If I was just now buying it at $4.30 or $4.31, I probably wouldn't want to sell it 30 seconds later. But because it's not 8 o'clock yet and there is a current bid and ask available, we were able to use that as a demonstration so that you could see just if I wanted out, where could I guarantee myself to get out? And if I wanted in, how could I get in? So it was really just a demonstration based on the current bid and ask. I'd hope you're not that touchy with your trading that you think you've got to get in and out seconds apart. Well, and sometimes if you're just trying to buy at the current ask, there's a delay in the reporting on that ask. So I typically put mine in for a penny or two above. On a stock like this, if I'm trading a stinky pinky, obviously you go a penny above, that could be a 20% gain. But if I were looking to buy AMD, to make sure that I got filled, I would probably put my buy order in at 435 or 432 or something like that. And on my sell order, I'd put it in at 4.25, just to ensure that if somebody else was selling at 428, I would still get out by 425. But I don't want my broker to fill me at 410, 415. I'd rather make that decision. And in using the limit order to do that, I have that ability. But typically when people are like, I'm trying to buy on the ask and I'm not getting filled, typically because there's a lot of people trying to buy and the computers are kind of bogged up and they are trying to process first come, first serve. Sometimes it doesn't work that way, but they try to process first come, first serve, where if you are buying slightly above the ask, if you think about it, think about not long ago, and I have a video on the website for this, the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac trade. And I warn people that on those particular trades, in most cases, when the momentum really gets going, you've got to put your buy order in like 20 to 25 cents above the ask just to get filled, and sometimes up to 50 cents below the bid because of how much volume is going in those at one time during those scenarios to ensure that you get filled. And those people that have traded those before in the past will understand why, and will understand that not knowing that has cost them money in the past. As far as using the bid and ask to help you enter and exit a trade, Kia, it's comparable to both. Now let's talk about other types of orders that with most brokers really pertain only to your common stocks. Yes, Kia, I know you were talking about the limit order, and the limit order is what I use for options and commons. But we're going to switch over and talk about a couple different types of orders that most brokers will only let you enter for the purchase or selling of common stocks. We're going to talk about stop orders. So why don't you guys tell me what myths you've heard about stop orders? Notice how I asked that question. Because I've been involved with other services, lesser services, that scare you away from using a stop order because, oh my gosh, some big bad man can see your stop order. I love stop orders, by the way. Every common stock trade I make on a stock above $1 has a stop order on it. Yep. That's actually not a myth, dog. Sometimes your stop gets blown through. That's right. But should your stop be a made-up number? What I think he means there, Kia, is sometimes it'll come down and fall right straight through your stop. Sometimes it'll hit your stop and bounce from there. But see, if you use the actual stops that are relevant according to the chart and not just a made-up number that you thought sounds good, it's very unlikely that your stop will be hit and you still want to be in the stock. What's the important thing about your stop? What should your stop be? Or more important, why should you not be upset if your stop is hit? There you go, Adam. It's part of the plan, right? Before you ever enter a trade, you should know what your stop is. And you should be prepared to execute it when your stop's hit. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a trade plan and said, you know what, I'm going to stop out if it hits that price. And as you watch the stock fall, you freeze up and you're unable to sell it when your stop price is hit. And then a day later, 10 minutes later, whatever it might be, you go, man, I really should have stopped out where I planned to. Has that ever been you? Well, Mickey, with real stocks, it doesn't work that way. There's too much money. Believe me when I say this, you're not a hair on a donkey's butt when it comes to the trading in real stocks and the money in real stocks. They're not going to deliberately drop a price to take out your stop and risk the losses that they would take with big money to do that. Now, for a lot of, penny stocks and whatnot, yeah, that happens a lot. That happens a lot. Talking about stocks that millions and billions of dollars are in. I mean, I'm serious. You're not. This entire group put together is not anything important that they'd be willing to drop a stock just to take you out. As a matter of fact, I truly don't even believe that happens in the OTC markets. I think it's just a cop-out for people that get pissy about a trade. Yeah, and Dan, with that, where it pertains to options, I'll tell you when we get into the talking about the options why I'm okay with that. Because, simply premiums can change just whether or not a candle's red or green. Anyway, when I plan a trade that says I'm willing to buy it at this, and I'm willing to assume the risk of stop price X, whatever it might be, if it goes below that price, it's no longer the trade I accepted. And way too many times in my development as a trader, I found myself unable. I'm sitting here staring at my trade plan. I'm let's say I was in AMD and it's like, okay, my stop's going to be 425. And I would see it fall and it's like, okay, I got to get ready to stop out. And then it would hit 425. Okay, let me wait a second. And then it would hit 424. Okay, let's see if it goes back to 425. And then it would hit 423 and 422 and 420 and 415. And okay, maybe I should have stopped out at 425. Has that ever been you? If the stock goes below my stop, I don't want it anymore. And I don't, frankly, I don't care if it goes back up. Because guess what? Guess what happens if it goes back up? I can buy it again. It's not illegal. But you can't go back and sell it at a higher price just because you missed your stop. Okay? Another reason I like stop orders. Anybody else have another reason I like stop orders? Yeah, I don't have to watch the trade. How many times have you been in a trade and you sold it because somebody told you to watch that level 2 and there's some big ass wall on it that you think can't be broken, so you sell only to see it keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Or, man, there's not a lot of bid support. This thing could fall a lot, so I'm going to sell it, and then it keeps going and keeps going up. Especially with swing trading, I'm planning a trade based on a daily chart, so nothing really matters until that day's over. And at the end of the day, I can adjust my stop. So let's talk about a stop order. Now, I'm not going to hide the fact that when I got in AMD over here, it hit my stop over here. I'm glad I sold because it fell much farther than my stop. And nobody called to tell me that it was guaranteed to go back up. It's not upset at all that I stopped out of the trade. But let's assume right now I hadn't stopped out of the trade. Which means what? For 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, I would have probably had 700 emails asking me why I hadn't stopped out of the trade, and me saying, well, you could sell it at any time. You don't have to wait for me to sell it. And then people being miserable about it. And then, what? Oh, man, you're a hero. No, that's not what I'm after. Let's just assume we were in this trade down here. And then all of a sudden we see it gap up. And let's assume that our stop was this low down here, 365. That was our stop when we entered the trade down in here. And now it's up here. We're talking the first day after it gapped up. If we had our stop entered down here when we bought at $3.65, and actually it would have been at $3.64 because 365 was the low, and 364 would mean we're making a lower low, and it's no longer the trade we thought we had. Upon the time when we gap up, do we leave our stop at 365? Yeah, I wouldn't. Why would you let it go from, on this day, the close yesterday at 412? Why would you let it go from 412 to 365? Dumb, 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 dumb. So where would be a logical place to set our stop based on the gap up on Monday? We get through the day, it does its price action, we're looking at it last night, we know we need to adjust our stop with a GTC, term, GTC, good till canceled. Well, there's a difference in just making up a stop and one that's supported by the chart. And I'm just wanting to talk right now about a hard stop order. A hard stop order. Where would that be at? How about the low from the gap up day? The low yesterday was 395. If it fell below the low of the gap up day on a subsequent day, guess what? There's a very high probability that it's going to come down to a minimum, the swing point, before the gap up. It might not fill the gap completely, but it's probably going to come back down to the swing point from before the gap up. So we're sitting at 412. We want to give it some leeway because that's what real traders do. You got to give some to be able to get more. And we could put a stop order in at 394. Now there's a couple ways to do a stop order. You know how we talked about market orders and limit orders? We talked market orders and limit orders. Well, there are two types of stop orders that work like market orders and like limit orders. The one that works like a market order is a stop on quote. So I could put my stop on quote in at $3.94, hit the sell button. It's term good till canceled because I just want it to be there forever until I change it. And what this says is when $3.94 is hit, they will market order sell my shares. And what is a market order? Giving permission to my broker to execute the trade at any price. Just execute it. I don't care what price you do it at. If we wanted to turn this into more of a limit order, we would go to a stop limit on quote. The stop price, that's going to be our $3.94. That's the price that's going to trigger the action of the order you are placing. So at $3.94, we want the stop triggered. What would our limit price be? If it hits $3.94, sell my stock at $5, right? Well, I wouldn't do it exactly at $3.94 because what if it hits $3.94 and there's only like 100 shares there on the bid? I like to give it a little bit of leniency, so I make sure that it executes, and I don't look at it tonight going, man, why didn't it execute at $3.94 and now it's sitting at $3? So if I was going to enter this order, I would put my limit price at $3.90. What that says is if $3.94 is hit, sell my shares, but you better sell them before $3.90. But there's got to be a bid there for your broker to execute. So I give them 4 cents of leeway to fill my order. Would I give them 4 cents of leeway on every stock? No. But when we're talking something in that range of $4, yes. Now today, AMD ran up even further. My stop, if I entered that yesterday, would be about 10% below the current price. Do I want my stop to be 10% below the current price? You guys ever hear the word correction? They use it in the media a lot. Oh, the market's due for a correction, or the market is correcting. You guys ever hear that word? And every time you hear that word, it's something negative, right? It makes it seem like something's going to crash. Well, a correction is a pullback at or exceeding 10%. So if this stock corrected, it would pull back at least 10%. I don't want my bid to be 10% below the current price, or my stop. I don't want to let the stock correct and let 10% go bye-bye. So if I'm simply like momentum trading, like a shorter term swing trade, I'm left with the ability to say, you know what, I want to give it some leeway to make some up and down movement, but I don't want to be selling too far from the top. What type of stop order could I enter in to guarantee I won't sell too far from the top, or at least if it pulls back further than a certain point, I won't have to suffer through that? A trailing stop. A trailing stop order for the price type, I can just go over here and I can select trailing stop, and I can either do it by a dollar amount or a percentage amount. I like to do it by a percentage amount. Now, if I'm dealing with stocks that are like 10, 15 bucks, I'll use a really tight trailing stop, 1, 2, 3%. Stocks in this range, 5% trailing stop. Now let's talk about what a trailing stop is, okay? A trailing stop, once I enter it, it will trigger my shares to sell if the stock pulls back from the highest point since entering the stop to the percentage I select. So let's say I put 5% in here. And it goes up to $4.50. Even though the current price is $4.29, if I put my good till canceled trailing stop order in for 5%, and it goes to $4.50, where will my stop be triggered? It's really easy. $4.50 times 0.05. So it's 22.5 cents. So 4.50 minus 0.225. Stock hits 427. My shares are gone. If it goes up to 450 and I have a 5% trailing stop in, if it were to pull back to 427, my shares would sell. Why do I like a trailing stop? Anybody have an idea on that? It secures profit. That's a good thing. It keeps me safe. It lets me ensure that if the stock goes up, even if it comes down, I'm going to get to stay in it for some run. I don't have to keep changing my stop price. If it runs, I'm still in it, and my stop automatically adjusts. All good answers that you're giving me. There you go, Ronald. I don't have to watch it. I don't have to decide. You ever sit and look at a stock and you're like, ooh, is that the top? Ooh, is that the top? Okay, that might be the top, so I'm going to sell. Crap, that wasn't the top. I mean, let's really face it. If the stock pulls back more than 5%, it's probably going to pull back a little more than that, and I could just buy at a better price, right? If I thought it was going to bounce again, I could just buy it at a better price. I let my trade plan act for me. Have you guys ever sat and looked at a chart and said, you know, if I bought it here and made my stop this price, okay, that's like a 3% loss. And man, if it hit just that resistance point, that'd be like a 10% gain. And when it comes time to actually buy it, maybe you chicken out, or maybe you do buy it. But when it comes time to stop out, you chicken out. Or when it hits that resistance and pulls back, you chicken out. And when you look back at it, you're like, dang, if I'd have just stuck to my plan, that would have been a really nice trade. You ever done that before? If your answer is no, I'm going to assume either you've never traded or you're lying. Because I've done it thousands of times. let your trade plan dictate your trade. Because chances are when you plan those trades, it's not hard for somebody to look at a stock chart and guess whether that stock will go up or down. It's really not hard. What's hard is trading in a way that protects you, knowing when to sell, when to stop out because the trade's no longer good, to minimize your losses. Those are important things. So a trailing stop a stop limit on quote, what that does is it executes your trade plan so you don't have to. There might not be a lot of negative emotion in a trade when the stock is going up, right? No, we just sit here and go, woo, look at it, new high of the day. But how many times do you look at a stock going down knowing that you should sell, but yet for some reason you simply can't do it? And now I want you to think about all the times that you have lost money and ask yourself how much more money you would have, even if they were losing trades, had you stopped out where you should have or where you had planned to. I'm not going to lie, my number is probably in the millions. So using a stop order, a stop limit on quote, what that does is if your stock falls below that price that you planned for, guess what? You didn't plan the trade right. I didn't plan the trade right. The trade is no longer fitting of the trade plan that was accepted. And when I say accepted, that means the risk of the trade plan was accepted. You don't want to go changing the trade plan because something falls. Get stuck changing your trade plan because it won't stop going up. Okay, those are the trade plans you want to change. Man, I thought I was going to sell here, but the darn thing just won't quit going up. So yeah, we can change those trade plans. Don't ever be stuck in a trade changing your trade plan on your stop. You need to be able to tell yourself with confidence, if it fails that price that I accepted according to my trade plan, I did not plan it properly, and that's fine. I will exit the trade, which will exit you from the emotion of the trade, and if I still like the stock, I will plan another trade and enter according to that trade plan. And I will execute according to that trade plan. Lot and fees. Would you rather lose fees or fees plus more money? And I'll also say, how many times has the thought of, I haven't paid my fees, or, you know, I can't sell because I'm not making money yet, actually cost you more money? Because nearly every time I've ever said that, I've lost more money. Because I'm not selling when the chart tells me to sell. I'm trying to convince myself of something else. And I know forgetting about the fees is a hard thing to do, but in reality, you kind of got to. And if you do, let me tell you what you'll find. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm just trading according to the chart. And even if I have a small account and they're little gains, I'm trading consistently. When that chart tells me to sell, I'm selling. When the chart tells me to sell, I'm selling. My losses are small. My gains might be small. But that account will go up. So don't ever be afraid to use a stop order. But there's a huge difference in saying, you know what, I'm going to buy AMD at 429 and my stop's 428. And saying, you know, if I'm going to buy AMD at 429, I need to understand that right now this swing high down here, this high close at 407 is my stop. And accepting that. Because chances of you stopping out at 428 if you buy at 429, probably pretty likely, right? And if I accept the trade based on a reasonable stop, what the chart tells me to be a reasonable stop at this point, guess what? If it falls below there, I don't want it. I don't want those shares anymore. I was only willing to take that loss, and you know what? Now I got to look at it and say, if my stop, if the chart is telling me the stop's going to be 407, do I even want to buy it at 429? Do I want to take the risk of it falling below 407? And that decision would be made regardless of what? If I said, you know, I don't want to take the risk of it falling to 407, my decision not to enter the trade at this point would be made regardless of what? This is one thing a lot of people leave out of their trade plans. Regardless of how high I think it could go. I don't care who on Idiot Hub or Twitter or in any chat room says, man, this stock's going to 10 bucks. Until it gives me a point to buy where the chart gives me a reasonable risk to reward ratio, I'm more concerned with what I could lose than what I could make. Those of you who may not be concerned more with what you could lose as opposed to what you could make, probably are here right now because of that. You probably subscribe to my service because of that, because you can't figure out why you keep losing money. And you forget to see if the floor is being pulled out from under you. Plan your trades according to the risk. Always focus on the risk. And I hate to say it, you'll make less trades and more money. Trailing stop orders. If you don't want to be in a stock long term and you only want to trade for their momentum, use a trailing stop order. When you enter a trade and you say, okay, I'm going to buy it here, and here's my stop. Start out with a stop limit on quote order. Why? Your trade plan will be executed for you. The stop you accepted when you bought into the position will be executed. And you could say, well, that's without letting me decide. Wrong. You decided to enter it. You decided what stop was reasonable for you. Well, what if it bounces after it takes out my stop? How many times have you not stopped out and seen it never bounce? We could go back and forth and play devil's advocate with each other all night long. Because I promise you, the majority of the time, if it falls below your stop, it's going to keep falling. And therefore, you shouldn't be worried about the few times it might do something different. Entering stop orders on common stock trades is great. Let me tell you another reason it's great. One thing we haven't touched on. And actually, I'm going to ask you, what do you think is another reason that having a stop order, whether it be a stop limit on quote or a trailing stop, could be beneficial? There's probably a number of reasons that would fall into one category. I forget about stuff all the time because I trade multiple accounts. So that'd be a good thing. But anybody here have kids? Anybody here have children? You know, let's say you have school-age children. Do you get a pick when the school nurse calls you and tells you to come pick them up? Do you get a pick when they go to the doctor or need to go to the hospital? What if you get in a car accident? God forbid, but you know, what if a family member passes away? What if you need to go to the hospital for some sort of health problem? I spent 8.5 months in a hospital, laying in a bed at Bethesda Naval Hospital with no stop orders. Tell me it can't happen, and I'll show you hundreds of thousands of dollars lost. I'm very serious about that. You plan the trade. You plan the stop. If it falls your stop, you didn't plan it right. Exit the trade. Use a stop order to execute your trade plan. Okay? How many times have you personally not sold something because, oh man, I had a meeting at work, or oh man, I was taking my kids to school, or oh, I had to pick up the kids from daycare, oh, the wife got a flat tire, I need to go jumpstart a friend, or oh man, I was at the doctor, I was at the dentist. Oh man, I had to use the bathroom really, really bad. How many times has that been you? Don't be afraid to use a stop order on your common stock trades. And don't ever listen to somebody foolish enough to recommend you not do so. Because when you enter a stop order on your common stock trades, you're entering them according to your trade plan. The risk you accepted when you entered the position. And if your stop gets hit, that's a good trade because you accepted that risk. When you bought it, you didn't accept a price lower. Yeah, when you start getting large positions, you'll find that you'll break it up and, let's say you had like 10,000 shares of something. You might have 2,500 shares on one stop order, 2,500 shares on another stop order, 2,500 shares on another stop order, and 2,500 shares on another stop order. I get broker alerts going off all the time. At the end of the day, it's like, oh wow, I guess I sold some of that. When I change my stop orders on stocks I've alerted here, what do? I send you guys a trade or position update, don't I? That's always the subject line of the email. Position update. I'm adjusting my stop on this position to this. If you're going to say you followed my alert, shouldn't you keep following my alert? Now, I don't think you should always follow my alerts for everything. I think you should use this service for what it's truly designed for and start to realize that the alerts are just my buys and sells, and I'm trying to teach you how to alert yourself. But if you're going to follow my alerts and I say adjust your stop to this, do it. Because I'm doing it. And then I don't have to watch it. And then I don't have to go, oh crap, okay guys, we're all going to get ready to sell this. Okay, hopefully you can get filled. Go, go, go. No, it'll be something like, oh crap, I guess I sold that yesterday. I didn't even realize it. Good thing I told you guys to adjust your stop.